police see first-hand accounts with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most bizarre, most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. For the love of Pete, everybody. It's 2 screw-ups in like last 5 episodes, and I've done over 200. I'm sorry. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy you found the podcast. And like I always say, I look at the numbers and I see everybody find it and binge listen. And I get just the best emails and messages from the fans of the show. And I so appreciate them. It keeps me going. It is a bit of a grind to work a full-time job where you work extra hours and then have the podcast. But when I get those messages and encouragement from you guys, it feels good. And it really does motivate me. And I would be ashamed and humiliated if I missed an episode, which has happened before, and there was much shame involved. So thank you guys. All that to say, thank you for the motivation. That's awesome. Guys, before we get started, I have a message to my fellow officers and police agencies out there that listen to the show. I want to tell you about an incredible disabled veteran-owned business, Black Box Safety. They've just been awarded a nationwide contract through Sourcewell to provide point-blank body armor to law enforcement agencies across the country. All agencies receive a 38% discount on point-blank vests, shields, and helmets. Get your team geared up with the most advanced ballistic protection customized for your department. To learn more, head over to blackboxsafety.com or drop them an email at sourcewell@blackboxsafety.com or connect with them on Instagram at blackboxsafety. All this will be in the show notes. No reason to memorize it. It's a fantastic deal they have going on, and my agency actually uses Point Blank, and they are the best IMO. So thank you, Black Box. And now to the show. Again, thank you for being here. You're going to hear the best, in my humble opinion, and many people out there, humble opinion, because I hear from them, the absolute best, unedited, unfiltered police stories, police calls that are told by the officers that experience them. And I don't think there's any better way to get a story than from the horse's mouth. So today's episode, excited for this guest because his situation is very interesting, and I can relate to it with how his police career started and where he is now. He's only got 15 months on the job so far, but worked a year as a patrol deputy for Teton County Sheriff's Office in the great state of Idaho. Small rural agency, 15 sworn officers. That includes investigations and admin, 10 patrol spots, and they rotate, taking turns doing bailiff. He's currently in police academy now after already working as a cop, which is fascinating, and he's got some stories to share. So please help me bring on the great Hagan Majors. Hagan!
How's it going, Steve?
It's going good, brother. Thank you for being here. We were chatting up a little bit. It happens sometimes on the podcast. We start chatting, and then it starts getting good, and I'm like, whoa, we gotta record this because it's super interesting. But you are a guy. You're a fan of the show. You've heard other people on the show, so you know what it's all about. And but you're a guy that started being a cop for a place that needed cops, and they actually worked you for quite some time without the academy. Tell me a little bit about that, how it went down.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a unique circumstance, and the more I listen to your show, the more I find out how unique it is. But yeah, I started kind of my interest in law enforcement in 2023. I had just gotten married and moved up to a new job. I was wrapping cars and tinting windows for work. I worked at a vinyl shop. And my brother-in-law reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, you're living in Teton County in Driggs, right?" I was like, yeah, that's where I'm at. He's like, "If you get a chance, I'm pretty sure one of my good buddies from a couple of years ago is the sheriff there now. His name is Clint Lameau. You should, hit him up, tell him I say hi." And by happen chance, there was like a public event. They do like this big band that plays in one of the city parks, and a bunch of people come around, and he was just directing traffic. As I was crossing the street, bumped into him, introduced myself, and he was like, "Well, what are you doing up here?" And I was like, "Oh, I work, I'm wrapping cars for this local guy." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know him." He goes, "Well, if you're ever interested in being a cop, come work for me. Like we have a couple spots open." And I kind of just like brushed it off like, oh, whatever, sounds good, man. But then I went to church on Sunday, and then he was at my church building. Got to talk to him there and got his number and stuff and started
Like,
going
this
on
guy's
some
stalking me.
ride-alongs. Yeah, it was just like super, super like just was falling right in place. I had never considered law enforcement before this.
Wow.
But I went on a couple ride-alongs, and on my first couple ride-alongs I went with him, I was like, I gotta do this. Like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
I just felt kind of a calling to get out and do it. So it took a couple months to get through, go on some more ride-alongs, getting all my paperwork and stuff in, testing and getting approved. And then, so I started just like 3 months after I had met him, and started on FTO field training.
And you had no police experience at all, just straight into FTO.
None. Yep. Straight into FTO. So
Wow.
my only somewhat relative experience, which is kind of what I focused on in my interview process and stuff like that, was working as a life coach for like teenage boys with behavioral disorders.
Oh, wow.
So I did a lot of like certifications and training for de-escalation tactics and stuff like that. So that was the only somewhat relative anything that I had done prior. But definitely like those are good communication skills that I learned there that I use on the job, now. Well, other than that, there was nothing even close. Like I was wrapping cars for 3 years before that. So
Wow. That's crazy, man.
It was a unique circumstance, but I got into FTO and excited to learn and everything, and I picked it up like really quick. I just felt confident right away. My FTO officers were, my training officers were like impressed with me right away. Not at all to brag. I just like I felt like this was my calling, and it just came easy, understanding law and case law and learning what to do and what not to do and the difference between, reasonable suspicion and PC and what I needed to do. Just came like a breeze. Like I didn't have to think about it too hard.
That's great.
So that went through. I was in FTO for 3 months, and then after I graduated FTO, they put me in a patrol car and gave me a gun and sent me on my way.
Wow. So the setup there is, so does this sheriff have a jail, or is he just more like a chief of police with a police department?
So it's unique. It's a sheriff's office. So we have the sheriff and we have a chief deputy. There's 2 patrol sergeants, and then we have 3 detectives and a few patrol guys. But we used to have the county used to have a county jail years ago, but because of funding from commissioners and lack of availability for jailers, that jail shut down a while ago. So we have to contract with a different county. So we have a sheriff's office, we have the sheriff and all the deputies, but we take all of our inmates to a neighboring county because we don't have our own jail. So it's a very unique situation that way too.
Interesting. And is there any other police departments within the county, or is Teton it?
It's it. So we have 3 towns or cities and a couple like incorporated communities, as they call them. But there's no police departments in any of the cities. So we contract with the cities as well to patrol and get hours of patrol in the cities. But yeah, any call that comes wherever it is in the entire county, it's just our office.
Interesting. So what's the total population for the county?
I think according to census, it's around 13,000 for the entire county.
Yeah, so that's
the entire it's not very big size wise either. It's like 450 square miles, so it's a pretty small county and definitely low population.
Yeah, I've heard. Why have I heard of Teton? Is there another Teton? Is there a national park that's a Teton or something?
Yep, Teton National Park. So where we are is right on the border of Idaho and Wyoming on the southeast side of the state. And the Teton Mountain Range separates Idaho from Wyoming. So we're on the Idaho side. On the Wyoming side is Teton National Park. So it's all the mountains. Right north of Teton National Park, they share a boundary, is Yellowstone National Park. And so there's a Teton County, Wyoming Sheriff's Office, and there's a Teton County, Idaho Sheriff's Office, and we are just on either side of that state line.
Okay, I gotcha. So, I don't even know where you would start with somebody who doesn't even have like a part-time academy. So, like when you start, do they just give you law books like here's motor vehicle law, here's criminal law, here's constitutional law, like in your off time or while we're driving around, start memorizing this, and then how was the field training, and also how long was the field training? 3 months, you said?
Field training was 3 months, and that's pretty much exactly what it was. Is we had our workbooks and stuff, and we had to get signed off. I had 3 different field training officers, one for each phase. So each phase is a month. And first phase is like you're basically watching. You're barely doing anything, and you're doing all of that. You got to check through and pass all these things to complete phase 1 and move on to phase 2.
Right.
And if you don't complete phase 1, then you can't move on to phase 2, things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of, we got to read the Idaho, like policing policy manual and sign off on that. We got to get at least like the basic, traffic and safety and basic criminal laws signed off by the end of that as well. And then obviously anything constitutional that's going to directly affect us, and the citizens, protecting their rights as well.
Right.
So it's definitely, it's a lot of information and firsthand experience all at the same time.
Wow. That is a lot. And how long is the police academy that you're in now?
It's 14 weeks. So I'm on week 3 right now. Just started, 2.5 weeks ago.
Is it paramilitary? They yell at you in formation and all that stuff?
Yep. So it's a non-stress academy, but it's it's formation, uniform, very very formal, and all the statewide certifications that we need happen there.
Interesting. And I see you have a beard, so they you don't have to be clean shaven.
Yeah, so the way the Idaho Academy works is whatever your department's policy is on grooming, facial hair, whatever it is, they expect you to follow that.
That's pretty sweet.
So there's some guys in my academy that can't have beards; they're clean shaven every day, and there's a couple guys with mustaches, and only a couple of us with beards. But
that's interesting. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like I work, I have a beard, and like I know a lot of guys out there. I think it's because they're old school. They like, and it's like more military to be clean shaven. But if you look at like the history of the world and even our country, like soldiers, police, men, warriors, always had beards. And then I don't know what the genesis is, the genesis of why people are, maybe it's uniformity, so everybody looks the same. You know what I mean? That maybe that type of thing. I don't know why, but at some point, being clean shaven was like a big part of like, at my academy they would bust the balls of the guys that had like 5 o'clock shadow by the end of the day, like like maybe like Portuguese or Italian guys had like the thicker hair. They'd bust their balls for that, almost like they wanted them to shave twice. You know what I mean? It's like kind of crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually pretty passionate about that. Exactly what you said, the history of men and masculinity. And keeping
beards,
and wearing
man.
a beard.
Come on. Hell yeah, it's masculine.
And exactly. And like I always like keep it nice. Don't look homeless.
Right,
Trim up,
yeah.
have a good barber. Whatever it is, like look good. But
you don't have like a big ZZ Top beard.
Yeah, exactly. Our sheriff wears a beard. Our chief deputy wears a beard. Both of our sergeants do. Like pretty much everyone in my office. And everyone looks good, and we have a pretty general acceptance from our community too. So
yeah, hell yeah. Well,
no
you're in
problem on our
Idaho,
side.
the land of real men. You're not in Massachusetts with a bunch of Nancy boys like I am.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Have you always lived in Idaho?
No, so I actually grew up in Western Montana, tiny town in Western Montana.
Oh, okay. All right. It's still
Yep.
equally like mountain man territory, I'd say. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I'm about 3, 4 hours from my hometown where I'm at now. But my wife's from this area, so I've been down in Idaho for about 5.5 years.
Nice, man. Good for you. Well,
Yeah.
Hagan, take us back to maybe 15 months ago. Can you remember the first call you got either taken on or you went to where you had you would consider a hot call, like you got an adrenaline dump and it was kind of crazy?
Yeah, my first couple months, FTO, I had a fair share of uh, what would be hot calls, but one of them that to me was like, okay, that's what adrenaline feels like.
Yeah.
Um, I was on phase 3, so I had been on just over 2 months now, and I'm driving with my field training officer. And at this point, like I'm driving and I'm initiating everything, and he's there to make sure I don't do anything stupid or illegal,
Just shadowing you.
kind of just shadowing. Um, so we're driving, and it's late at night. It's probably 10 or 11, and there's this car up in front of us on the highway, and just like textbook exactly what they would show you in any situation, DUI. This guy just driving, over the center line, coming back, driving off the road, just crazy on the road, speeding up, slowing
Right.
down. So I'm getting all excited because this is, my first real DUI stop by my like as me initiating it.
Sure.
So I catch up to this guy and um, light him up and pull him over, and he pulls off just to the side of the highway, and it's January in Idaho, so the sides of the roads are just covered in snow. So he pulls a little deep into the snow, but uh, I get out and I'm starting to walk up to him, and I can see that his front wheels are still spinning in the snow. So I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. So kind of cautious, like, is this guy trying to run or what's going on? Or is he just that drunk that he didn't put his car in park or hit the
Right.
brakes or something? So I'm walking up to him, and he rolls down the window, and I'm talking to him, and this guy's just like wobbling, shaky, like glassy eyes, all the indicators
Yep.
just reeks in there. So I have him step out, and I'm feeling all excited. I'm like, oh man, I got this. Like,
Oh yeah.
my
Of
first
course.
time.
Yep.
So we bring him out and put his car in park. Sure enough, he had just left it in drive and wasn't putting his foot on the brake, so he's just sitting there spinning in the snow. Um, Keep in mind, we're right off the side of the highway. Like, he barely pulled off, and I'm not gonna, have him park in a safer place because this dude's, wasted.
Right.
We bring him back, and my training officer starts running him through field sobrieties, and I'm, running his information through dispatch. And as we're standing there, my training officer is being real cautious of the edge of the road, making sure that someone's not going to come flying by and hit this guy. Um, so he's kind of cautious, trying to find a good place for him to do his tests. And as we're sitting there, this truck comes by and smacks the back of my patrol car as it's driving, just
Ooh. Yeah.
and sideswipes it and scrapes along. My training officer jumps out of the way, like misses him by probably a foot or two. And there's
Damn.
glass and plastic pieces that scatter all in between my patrol car and this guy's car. And we're watching there. I'm making sure nobody's hit with anything or nothing flew off and hit anybody. And once me and my training officer kind of make sure we're okay and the guy we pulled over is okay, I'm looking ahead at this truck expecting him to, like, whoopsies, just hit a cop car. I'm gonna pull over now.
Right.
And he just speeds up and keeps going. And I was like,
Whoa.
whoa. So I look at my training officer, and he's like, get the F after him. And I was like, whoa, okay. So my training officer stays roadside with the suspect, and I hop back in my patrol car. I look, and it's scraped all along the side. The back window is shattered out.
Yeah.
I hop in and I chase this guy, still in field training, but I'm completely alone now.
Yeah.
And this guy's running from me. So I'm lights and sirens. I catch up to him, and he's not stopping. And this guy's going all over the road and speeding up.
Another drunk.
And another drunk. So I radio into dispatch, and I'm feeling all like, man, I'm on top of this. Going northbound, 70 miles an hour, like giving my directions, turning east, And this guy takes me on a little run for about 2 or 3 miles, and ends up just pulls right into his driveway, and I'm behind him. So now I'm by myself, 3 miles away from my training officer, and this guy's here, and I'm like, okay, I've got to do a felony stop here, but I've never done this before, So I take all and I had been trained, in field training how to do felony stops, but this is my first time like executing it, and it's like go time.
Yeah.
So I do it all, and in my head, my heart's pumping, and I'm giving him commands, yelling at him, gunpoint, and waiting, and he's not coming out. So I'm not approaching the car. I don't want anybody to hop out at me or anything like that. So I'm just waiting there, and this other car pulls in behind me in the driveway, and so I'm like panicking. I'm like, what am I doing now? And then we have a undercover narc detective who hops out, and he had like heard it on the radio and followed me to this location. Jumped out. He's in just civilian clothes, no vest, nothing, just has his gun on him. So he comes up on the other side of my vehicle, and now we're both yelling at this guy. And eventually this guy, sticks his hands out of his window and decides to comply, but it was about 10 minutes after he had pulled up to his house. He comes back, and he's like wobbling on his way back. We get him cuffed up, and my heart's still pounding.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like, holy cow. We get him cuffed up and everything, and this guy is just completely like unaware of anything. And he's a Mexican guy, but he's like, you guys don't even know that I'm a citizen. You racist cops, you're doing all these things, blah blah
yeah,
blah.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I can't see you. It's 11 o'clock at night. You just crashed into my patrol car. It's what happened. I don't care what color you are.
Yeah. Was he legal citizen?
Yeah, legal citizen. Like, just grew up there. Just a dude who lived in Idaho. He was just mad that he was getting arrested.
Pulling the race card right away.
Decided to turn it on us.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we arrest him and take him back, and he's being, combative with us the whole night. And on the way to the sheriff's office, he's asking me, what'd you do with this guy? He says his name, and it's the first name of the first guy that we stopped.
Oh.
So I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, my buddy, this guy. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here now.
Yeah.
It's like, so you know that we stopped him? Yeah. I was drinking with him right before. I was like, thank you for that, first of all.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the guy knew him, and whether he intentionally, sideswiped me to try and get his buddy out of a DUI or not, kind of still up in the air, but that's exactly what it seems. Both of them ended up going to jail that night. The first guy was, excessive, and he did what he did. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a lot to, I felt confident and ready the whole time. I was excited. But it was definitely like looking back on it, I was like, man, like that could have gone really, really bad.
Yeah.
And it didn't, I'm lucky for sure. But that was just a little taste of, hey, new cop in Idaho, rural area. This is kind of what you're expected to do on a moment's notice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, and I'm sure as you continue in your career and you get more training and learn more, you'll look back at that and be like, damn, wow, I really didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you probably already realized, like, wow, dude, I would be crapping my pants if I was in that situation. That's crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah, that call was definitely it was a really good learning experience, things that I'm like, I need to take this a lot more seriously. First of all, I need to like, really focus and know my stuff, so that I'm not just getting lucky, but that I'm, doing things good and safe. But also it let me know that this is definitely what I was wanting to do because I was surprised at how confident I felt doing it.
Yeah.
Like in the moment, it was like natural. It's like I knew what to do, I knew how to do it. Obviously, I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to say there's probably guys listening to this right now have been on for 20 years and they're like, this guy's an idiot. But
No.
in the moment, I felt like I knew what I was supposed to do then and there. So I was like, yeah, this is my career. This is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. So
Yeah, that's great, man.
yeah.
Definitely intense call for, especially for being that earlier in your career. Jeez. Can you tell us a strange or bizarre thing you've dealt with so far?
Yeah, so this one, there's this one lady, and there's kind of a couple incidents we had with her that led to this real bizarre, strange incident. But basically, this lady has obviously got something going on mentally, and it seems like it happened kind of later in life. So she was married, she has a daughter, lived a pretty normal life, and something flipped at some point. She's in her probably late 40s, early 50s, maybe. Um, First time I dealt with her, she shows up to the sheriff's office and is asking me questions about custodial exchanges and stuff like that. And I'm just like, hey, that's all civil stuff. I don't know your papers. I don't know these things.
Right.
Whatever agreement you have with you and your husband, I'm not going to give you any advice on that. And the more she's explaining it, she's like, well, my husband, he wanted me to drop my daughter off at 7, and that was the agreement, in Pocatello, which is 2 hours away. And I'm looking at the clock and it's 8 o'clock, and I'm like, 7 today? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, and you didn't do it? And she's like, no. I was like, and that's like your court agreement? Well, yeah, but I didn't want to drop my daughter off. And I'm like, all right, this might be a little bit more. So we contact dad and one of our detectives and look into it, and they kind of took it over from there. But eventually, there was a whole custodial interference case that came from that. She was borderline kidnapping her daughter and trying to get our permission to do it.
Right.
So that was a whole thing. First time I met her. Second time I met her was months after that. She had called 911 and said that someone had broken into her house. So, me and my sergeant rush over there, and we're talking to her, and we're like, what happened? She's like, well, I went for a walk and I came back and my door was wide open. And we're like, oh, okay. And we're like, you think there's anything missing? And she's like, yep, a red pair of panties is missing from upstairs. And I was like,
Weird.
that's it? Anything else? Nope, nothing else. And I was like, all right, do you mind if we come in, take a look, see if there's anything suspicious, take some pictures, stuff like that? Yeah, for sure. So we're inside talking to her, and place is just a mess, just like gross. There's rotting food in the fridge and piles
Oof.
of trash that haven't been taken out, and just stuff scattered all over the place. And we go upstairs and we're looking, where she said the panties that were missing were, and there's no panties. She said she had left them on the ground, and we're like, well, where do you keep the rest of your panties? And she's like, well, I don't have any other pairs. We're like, okay.
Oh, gross. That's rough.
Looking around, and we're like, all right. She's got a lot of stuff, tons of stuff, just only one pair of panties.
Yeah.
But so the whole situation is just like that in itself is weird. And we're like, all right. And we're kind of putting things together, and we're like, well, we don't know. There's no evidence really that anybody broke in, and I don't want you to be too worried. Did you lock your door? She's like, no, I leave my door open for my cats so they can run in and out. I was like, okay, so is it possible that you left your door open when you went on your walk? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, all right. And my sergeant is like, I'm not trying to be intrusive, but is it possible you're wearing that pair of panties? And this lady like looks down and opens her pants a little bit. And she's like, well, yeah, that's possible. I'm
Oh
like,
my
okay.
gosh, what the hell?
Like, all right. So that's good. So we wrap it up with her and we leave and we're like, man, like this this lady is on something else. We're asking her too while we're there, like, hey, you are you up on your medications? Yeah, I took everything today. Okay. So that was our my second time with her. She lives in a duplex. Like the house is split in half, one door on this side, one door on this side.
Right.
Um, and few months go by and we get another call from the guy on the other side of the duplex. Calls us and he's like, "Hey, my neighbor is acting kind of weird." And we're like, "Yeah, she does that."
Yeah, you're like that's
But
what she does.
yeah, but we're like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "So she just walked to the front of my house on my side of the property holding a gas can in her hand, and she asked me who all lived in my side of the apartment." And he was like, "Oh, it's just me. Like, it's just me. Like, sometimes my girlfriend is here, but that's it." And she's like, "Okay, good to know." And then she asked me if I was ready for the big event.
No.
And I was
Uh-oh.
like, "Whoa." So we run over there and I talk to him and my sergeant talks to her on the other side and kind of get his story. And sure enough, he's like, "Yeah, she was just like walking over here, gas can in hand, like looked like she was looking for places to dump it, the way she was looking around."
Oh boy.
So I go around and I'm talking to her and our sergeant now, and we're like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, nothing." And I'm just like, "Hey, I'm just gonna be super frank with you about why we're here. We got some kind of concerning reports from some of your neighbors that you were maybe walking around with a gas can." And she's like, "Well, yeah." We're like, "Okay. Is there any reason for that?" And she's like, "Well, what would you think?" It's like, "I don't know. Like, I hear a lady walking around with a gas can and then says, are you ready for the big event?" And it
Right.
sounds like you're about to burn the house down. That's what it sounds like. And she just kind of stares, doesn't answer anything. And we're like, "So what were you doing? Like, what were you up to?" And she was like, "Well, I was gonna burn the house down."
Oh
Just like
boy.
straight, just like that. And we're like, "Okay." And my sergeant like kind of gives her an out. And he's like, Is that really what you were gonna do, or are you just like trying to play some weird joke with us?" And she was like, "Well, I can't really do it anymore because you guys are here." And we're
Oh
like, "All right." And
jeez.
asking her, why do you want to burn the house down? What's going on? And she's like, "Well, thought I'd get the firemen to work." We're like, "All right." Just
Those
adds
lazy
to it every single
firefighters. Get them
time.
out. Yeah.
And so me and my sergeant are like contemplating, we're like, is this lady actually gonna burn a house down, or is she just being like weird and trying to be funny because there's
Right.
cops here, and trying to say all these things? And we're like, "Well, where's that gas can?" And she's like, "Well, I realized it wasn't full all the way. I only had about half a tank. So it's in my van right now. I was about to go to the gas station and fill it up and come back."
Right.
We're like, "Okay. So you were gonna fill up your gas can because you didn't have enough and then come finish the job, light the house on fire?"
Right.
And she just kind of looks at it and she's like, "Well, it doesn't matter because I can't do it anymore. You guys came too early." And we're like, "All right." So
Jeez.
take all of that. We detain her. We eventually get a search warrant for the house for any like plans or flammable anything, any spilt gas, stuff like that. Um, and we searched the whole house. The only gas can, only flammable material was what she was carrying in her hand. She had the gas in it,
Yep.
and the only like match or lighter or flint and steel, anything flammable was a lighter.
Why is this happening?
Other thing
There
we
we.
found in her pocket
I'm
was
sorry, brother. We just had a little gap there. Say that last 15 seconds again.
oh, I was just saying the only lighter found, um, any flammable anything was in her pocket on her person when we had detained her, and we also found a note an eviction notice from her landlord that told her she had 3 days that she had gotten the day before.
There you go.
So putting it all together and talked to her prosecutor and everything, and ended up she got charged with attempted arson. But yeah, that was very strange, bizarre. That whole the lead any instance with this lady was definitely bizarre, but that one was kind of the peak of bizarre
Yeah,
things that I've had to
absolutely.
deal with.
That's one of those people
Yeah,
you deal with them and you're like, they've not been on the radar before, and you leave the house the first time and you're like, this is a new
something's gonna
thing.
happen.
This is a new thing for us. This house is a new thing.
Yeah,
We're going to be
yeah,
coming to
we're
this
gonna be
house.
here a lot.
Yeah. I don't know where
Oh,
you've been this whole time I've been working, but just from talking with you, I'm going to see you a lot more.
the other thing I forgot to mention, when we were doing the search warrant on the house, she had a dead cat on her couch, like wrapped in a blanket, like she was
Oh
trying to keep it
boy.
warm. But this thing was like rigged, like had been there for, a day or two.
Oh, gross.
And we were just like, dude, what is going on? We asked her about it. We're like, hey, what's going on with your cat on the couch? Oh, I was just trying to keep him warm. And we're like, he's dead. That cat is dead. And she's like, oh yeah, I was kind of worried that was the case.
I was picking up on that. I thought maybe. Um,
It's like stiff and it smells bad. Like, how do you not know that,
do you guys
So
have
yeah, that was
clinicians or anything you can call out, like to come talk to people like this, just get a mental profile on them?
yeah, so we basically what had happened with that is without sharing too much, prosecution had talked to a whole line of people. So the consensus or sentencing would be more focused on mental health
Yeah.
treatment rather than jail time. So that was really good. That night she ended up getting, like we took her to get a psychiatric check, and she was taken in by a hospital and
Right.
held there for a while. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was that had to be the case. That is a weird
Yeah.
one, brother. Hagan, can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying moment so far?
Yeah. So this one, again, it's one that is kind of lucky, more than anything else. I was graduated from FTO for probably 2 or 3 months. So I'm on the road on my own, and we have such low guys at this point that there's a day shift, there's a night shift, and there's a swing, and there's one on each. So there's a lot of times you're the only deputy covering the entire county by yourself. So any calls, anything, you're alone.
Wow,
And I was on
450
nights.
square miles alone. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm on nights, and you know, lowest call volume by far is nights. We usually get called out once or twice to something small, but every once in a while it'll be a little something bigger, and we'll call someone else out to come assist us. But it's 3 a.m. and I'm at the sheriff's office, and I get called from dispatch. Respond to this area. Woman is reporting that her ex-husband is trying to break into the house. They've had several problems with him before. Dispatch looked him up. He's been, he's got an NCO against her and the kids. He's not supposed to be there. He's had previous convictions for domestic violence, all this stuff, and previous break-in attempts at this house. So already it's 3 a.m. and I tell dispatch to get somebody else en route. I'll get out there as fast as I can, but this is not a not a one officer approach here.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm speeding out there, and I'm like a 15-minute drive from this place running code 3. So I'm getting out there as quick as I can. And the unfortunate part about where it is it's way out in this incorporated community, and it's this straight highway for a super long time. And the house is like at the end of miles of fields. So there's not a super quiet approach on it. Like even with my lights and sirens off, you can see headlights coming from,
Yeah.
from 2 miles away. So when I turn on to this road, I kill my lights because I don't want him getting aggressive or anything. I'm rolling up as quiet as I can. But I pull up and I see his truck. They had described it was parked right across from her house. Um, but I don't see him anywhere, and I'm kind of being cautious. I'm not sure if he's hiding in a bush or on the other side of the house or in his truck. So I'm like not sure where anything's going and still waiting for backup. But dispatch tells me they're still on the phone with the RP, and the RP says, she saw me come up and park, and she's like, I'm pretty sure he saw you too, and it looks like he's hiding on the backside of his truck.
Mm.
So that's good for me because I can at least know where he's at. I've got eyes inside telling me what's going on.
Right.
But I'm still alone. Don't have any word on backup yet. But last thing I want now is this guy grabbing a gun or something inside of his truck. That was another information point, is that he carries 2 rifles in his truck at all times.
Boy.
So I flip around. His truck is tinted out completely, like 5% on all sides. So even with my lights on bright, you can't see anything in the inside. I
Right.
flip around to the front so I can see in the windshield, and I see him sitting in the back seat, kind of hunched behind the driver's seat. So now I turn on my floods and I jump out and get to the back of my car. I grab my long gun out, and I'm kind of positioned, best tactical spot. There's no cover for me besides my car, so I'm kind of on the back seat pillar, diagonal from him, so he can't see me behind my floods. But he's just sitting in there, and I'm giving him commands, yelling at him to show me his hands, because has his hands tucked down where I can't see behind the seat. So now it's like, okay, this is a real situation now. This is more than
Yeah.
just getting this dude to not break into a house. Like, he could very well be loading a gun or doing something, and like his shoulders are moving and stuff. So I've just got him lined up, ready, but I'm yelling at him, show me your hands, show me your hands. Like, let's make this easy, stuff like that. And still no backup. I'm getting on my radio, like, did we get a hold of anyone? Dispatch is like, not yet. No one's answered their phone. So I'm, just crossing my fingers, praying in my heart, stuff like that, that this is gonna go a good way. Um, and it's about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes of me like that with him.
Oh, it's a long time, brother.
Yeah, I've just got him in my sights and making sure he's not pulling up a gun or something. Um, Still giving him commands. About 20 minutes later, my sergeant comes up. They had finally got a hold of someone, and by the end of it, there was 5 guys there. But waking people up and getting suited up, getting in their cars and running out takes a while.
Oh yeah.
So for the first 20 minutes, it's just me and this guy, and he's barricaded himself inside of his truck, and it ended up being this like 3-hour ordeal with him barricaded in there. And at one point, he had called his boss, who called us. We knew this guy, and he called the sheriff's office and was telling him that he got a call from this guy and said not to approach the vehicle because he told his boss over the phone, to tell the cops if they try to take me out of this, I'm going to shoot them. So he tells us that, and I was like, man, I was face to face with this guy for 20 minutes. Like, anything could have happened there. Another thing that was just so lucky. And, I was sitting there ready, but, that's, no one wants to be in that situation either. So my intensity level, adrenaline level is through the roof, especially when I'm there alone by myself.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I had been on for 6 months at this point, and I'm handling something like this completely by myself. eventually we got boss on the phone, kind of back and forth with this guy, and was able to do some negotiations, and he came out willingly, and we got him
Whew.
cuffed up and taken away. So, but it was like a 3 or 4 hour ordeal, um, and had to sit there by myself for 20, 30 minutes. Just again, lucky that nothing worse happened. But in the
Oh,
moment, you don't know. So like the intensity of that is just, over your head by
yeah.
yourself there.
Yeah. And I mean, you have no backup. I mean, saying someone who shows up in 20 or 30 minutes as is backup is kind of stretching it. That's more of like,
Yeah.
reinforcements, but backup should be there, you would hope. But you're I mean, the whole county, you're the police force. So is there ever a time when there's like a trooper going through or around there that could come help you? They show up sometimes.
Yeah, we have a residential trooper who actually works with us a lot. He's really good. And I think in that situation he is like on a training or something, or I'm not sure because usually he's like the first one to answer his phone. Um,
What are his hours? What does he work?
he kind of switches back and forth between days and nights every 3 months or so, but um, he's always like one of the most reliable guys. He's works with us a ton, super cool guy.
That's great.
Um,
But there's only one of them, and he has to have a
yeah,
life and go to training and vacation and
yeah,
everything else. So damn, man, we get. I mean, buddies I am friends with that are work at bigger agencies think it's crazy because we run one man ships, and but we have neighboring towns. Some of them have bigger police departments, and they can, I've been on bad calls before for like 10 minutes at the longest, which it feels like eternity, when you need
hmm
somebody there to help you. But 30 minutes, my man, woo! Especially 6 months on, that's crazy.
yeah. It was another thing that like in the moment, I was as calm as you can be. I was confident. I wasn't, I wasn't stressed beyond, being reasonable and making good decisions and stuff.
Right.
But it was definitely like, man, this could go any direction right now, and I just have to, be ready for whatever happens.
Yeah. Have you ever thought
Especially
about
when
that?
he's down there moving with his hands. I'm just like,
Oh yeah,
dude.
absolutely.
We
Have you ever?
also we did find two rifles loaded in the backseat of his truck too. So it was a very real threat that was, could have been seconds away from being worse than it
Right.
was.
It could have happened. What do you guys have?
hmm
ARs, patrol rifles.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Um, have you ever thought in one of those situations where you're like it's stressful, but it's not over quickly? And have you ever like just felt your heart in your chest and been like, this is not healthy. Like your heart beating for that fast for that long. You're like, this isn't ending, and I'm like running my body on nitro. It's just like you're
Yeah.
ready to go, but there's like nothing to do. Just stand there. That
Yeah.
is got to be
Definitely.
so bad for you.
Yeah. And the biggest thing I was thinking about is, I was keeping this guy in my sights in case he pulled a gun on me. Um, but I'm also thinking, my back is to a highway right now, and houses behind me, cars behind me, stuff like that. So I'm also like one eye's, down on my sights, and the other eye, I'm like trying to use my peripherals to like, make sure that there's not somebody else lurking around or one of his buddies that he called,
Right.
So that was stressful because I'm like, if I look away from a moment and he pulls his gun up right then, that's scary. I did have that kind of that wall of light where he didn't know exactly where I was. I had turned all my lights off except for my floods, so I wasn't like
Right.
silhouetting myself or anything. But it was, yeah. I mean, he could have shot towards my vehicle, and it definitely would have been close to where I was.
Right.
So I was definitely like as much on a swivel as I could be. Um, but yeah, it was 20 minutes of me like talking to myself in my head, like, okay, watch him, but also be aware what's going on outside
Right.
of him. So yeah, it was definitely, yeah, it's not good for you at all. That
Oh
kind of
yeah,
stress.
totally not.
Yeah.
So have you had a heartwarming encounter so far in your career?
I have. This one just happened about a month and a half ago, and it starts very much not heartwarming. We had a pretty bad domestic victim who'd gotten beaten real bad by her boyfriend, just like black and blue, and um, the 911 call is like one of our training calls now because she calls and over the phone you can hear him screaming and trying to pound this bathroom door down, trying to get at her,
Yeah.
and yelling at her and cussing at her, and she's crying and screaming on the phone. Um, I didn't respond to that call. I wasn't on, but kind of got intermingled in the case, doing follow-ups and stuff like that. Um, but I had served her some papers at one point, some like no contact order papers through the case. I had showed up and she broke down while I was there to serve her the papers. She just like, had this real emotional moment and broke down. So I sat with her on her porch for a little bit and just talked to her and kind of had a little heart to heart and let her know that like we were there for her and you know wanted to make sure like if she needed anything, gave her like the all the information she needed for support if she didn't have it. But just kind of metaphorically took my badge off for a moment and kind of had a heart to heart,
Yeah.
just talked to her
Nice,
human
man.
to human.
Yep.
And to me it was just that's just what you do. When someone's breaking down, you gotta, sympathize, be empathetic with them.
Sure.
Um, so to me, it was like kind of a one and done. Talk to her and then, moved on and, let her know if she ever needed anything to call our office, even if she just needed to like feel safe, whatever it was, to get some help and that all of us cared about her and, believed her, all this stuff. Months go by. That case, she ended up uh, taking all of her statements back
Oh no.
about the case, and
Yeah.
was like too afraid to go forward with it. So
Hmm.
the case got dropped, and the guy just got away. Nothing happened to him. Um, Months later, got a delayed report. This another girl, different girl, came in and reported domestic violence incident from the night before. So I'm sitting there taking her report, asking, what happened, who it was, blah, blah, blah. And she tells me this guy's name. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's the same guy.
Ugh.
So I take that report and, I tell this girl that we're going to do everything we can. But I was just super upfront with her. I was like, listen, the court system and the justice system sucks for victims. It's gonna be tough, but we really need you if we're gonna push this. Like we need you to be on our team so we can, use your testimonies tonight
Right.
because this is a delayed report, wasn't
Prosecute the guy.
911. Yeah, it's like it's gonna rely heavily on your testimony in court when it comes down to that. And she was like, oh, okay, like I don't really know. But she brings up this previous girl. She's like, I know his ex-girlfriend. I've talked to her a couple times. Um, but let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna push this regardless. I'm gonna send it in. But we definitely, when it comes to the court proceedings, we're gonna need your testimony. Um, so next week, second victim calls me back and she's like, hey, I talked to first victim and she wants to uh, reinstate her charges or however you do that. She wants to refile if that's possible. And I was like, yeah, let's talk, have her talk to our prosecutor as well. We'll see what we need to do. Um, and so I talked to her on the phone, the first victim. This is 6 months after the original incident. And, I've been talking to her. I was like, hey, I'm Deputy Majors, just catching up with you. Wanted to see what you're wanting to do with this case. Um, and she like kind of had a moment on the phone where she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're Deputy Majors." She's like, "I had no idea how to contact you." She had moved out of state since then, moved back with family on the East Coast to get away from all that. And she's like, Deputy Majors, I wrote you a letter that I was going to give you, but I was so embarrassed after I recanted my statements that I just didn't do it. But like that day, she read the letter to me over the phone.
Oh,
It was
wow.
like that day that you like sat with me on my porch and talked to me meant everything, and like wrote the statement about how much she appreciated that and how much she appreciated all the other deputies that had helped her in our office and what we do.
Nice.
And read this super, super well thought out letter. And it was really cool for me, but mostly, you don't hear that a lot um, about police in general. She's like, I really appreciate your office. Like the guys that are there, you are all amazing. I can really trust that you guys are going to do the right thing, stuff like that. And that was really cool to hear. And that like that was almost a year into law enforcement at that point, and that was the first time in a year that I had really heard something that genuine and heartfelt from somebody.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel like, okay, that last year, all of it was worth it. All the times people cuss at me and hate me and spit on me and stuff like that, like it was all great because there's someone out there, there's one person at least who really, really needed us and appreciates us. And that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's great. Yeah, we need that little pat on the back every once in a while, at least,
Yeah.
keep us going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. Great story. And I'm glad to hear that she's, with family now and not caught in that cycle of. I thought you were going to say she recanted everything and then the guy moved back in, but thankfully that wasn't the case.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the worst, going to the over and over again to the same thing, same outcome every time. Those drive you nuts. So next question, final question, is advice to new police officers. You might be the perfect person to give it because you are a new police officer yourself. From what you've learned so far in the last 15 months, what advice would you give to new candidates?
Yeah. So first of all, this segment, when I was considering law enforcement, is when I found your show. I just looked up like police podcasts, basically.
Yep.
Found your show, started listening to it in like the 3 months between when I met the sheriff and started as a deputy. And this segment from all the guys previous really, really helped me. Like
Oh,
all
great.
their advice, was awesome, for me to hear every day, different experiences, different things. So, from what I've heard and applied from all of that, it's helped me tremendously. Just my attitude, my overall perception of the job. Um, but my biggest advice is it's really easy to be prideful and have an ego in our job. But if you want to be any somewhat good at doing what we do, drop that. Let that go. You are in a position of power and you got to be the authority, but you also are a human before you're a cop.
Right.
So act like a human, be a human, and use your authority as a way to help and not a way to boast yourself. Don't get in power trips with people. Just be confident that you're doing what you're doing for the betterment of society. It's really, really easy to be prideful when you're starting, even because it's the first taste of doing things on your own and being the one in charge.
Oh, it's weird, isn't it? Like you're all of a sudden like you're in public with a badge and a gun, and like you've just been watching cops your whole life in movies and TV and in real life, and now you're one of them. It is kind of surreal. It's like I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I'm the cop. This is weird.
Yeah. But anytime that cops get, I shouldn't say anytime. Anytime where the cop is wrong in an incident that goes, criminal or public, whatever the case may be, you can almost always take it back to pride or ego. So if you drop that and focus on doing what you're supposed to do, protecting others, uh, life's property, protecting their rights, and if that's your focus, if you're got a good moral code, if the ethics that you focus on are constantly in the back of your mind, just remember that you're a human too. The people that you're arresting, the people that you're dealing with you are the same race, the same breed,
Right.
and drop your ego and learn. That's the best part about the job, is whether you're 1 month on, 15 months on, and 5, 10, 20 years on, we learn all the time. We're always learning. And that's
Oh yeah.
like how to
I still
be a
crack the
good
book.
cop.
Absolutely. You're always going
Yeah.
to come across things that you're like, what the hell is this? What is? I think I remember this law, or I remember this type of situation, but you haven't done it in 10 years or whatever. You definitely have to always hit the books.
Yeah. And the other thing that really helped me that I'll pass along as well is the mental health focus. Um, you're gonna see horrendous things, and you'll have pretty graphic death scenes and people doing really evil things, that most humans don't need to see and don't have to see. And you see that for a job. That's not a normal thing for humans,
Right.
to see that all the time, every day for 10 to 20 years. So get ahead of that. In my short time and the things that I've seen, get ahead of it, get the counseling you need, have a support system you need, have a good way to relieve stress, um, whatever the case is. Do that before you need to do it. It's the same as staying in shape so that when you have to run, you can run. Take care of your mental health weekly, daily, whatever you need to do, so that when you go through something traumatic, you'll know how to take care of it, and it's not going to build up, and you're not going to have, you know, episodes and breakdowns more than you need to, I guess, as a cop. But
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mental health and pride, the first sin, the great
yeah,
morning star in his fall, because he wanted to sit on the
exactly.
throne. Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Major, it was so fun to have you on. Honored to have you on, man. I
Yeah, I
thought it was
appreciate you
so
having me.
interesting. Your situation is very different, and
Hmm.
you just don't run into, like, I've heard similar things, and I went through a similar type of training coming on. Like I told you before we started, me and my buddy got hired, and they were like, Police Academy in 6 months, we're going to put you on a waiver and, train you. And then we were shorthanded. So then another 6 months and we were shorthanded. So like we worked a year and a half without getting fully trained. And it was, it was frustrating for us, but also exciting.
Hmm.
But that's kind of like, I don't hear those stories anymore, but it's interesting that in Idaho, they still kind of allow that to happen. And I think that's probably just because of the structure of the laws in that state. Like we were saying, like it's not a place like Massachusetts or California is super litigious. People are, going after each other. And really, I mean, it's always just been, you get sworn in and now you have authority.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's kind
Yeah.
of, it's kind of a throwback. It's kind of cool, especially doing it at a sheriff's place. But yeah, I mean, just super fascinating. You had some great stories already. And what's good for me is you are young in this career, so you can go ahead and come back in a couple of years. You're a well I can go back to every
Right.
couple of years.
Now, whenever you need some new stories, I'll tell you what I got.
Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely, man. And you don't have any social media or anything like that. You're not really interested in being followed by anybody, or
Yeah, I do have social media, but I follow my friends and family on it. I post pictures of my kid and stuff, so it's nothing crazy, nothing anybody would super want to be following. But
I understand.
yeah,
Well, hey, if anybody has a question for Hagan or a comment or want to reach out to him, they can just do it to me, steve@thingspolicec.com, and I can get the message. I can connect you guys.
yeah, definitely.
if that's
Definitely.
cool.
If you want to get some contact information, I'm cool emailing and talking to people, no problem. So yeah, if anybody wants to reach out for anything, definitely.
Awesome, man. And I really love that you said that about the show, that you listen to the show, and it like, because I get those emails from people, and it's like really, it's like the best email I get. It's like, man, that the guests, and no credit to me, just the guests that come on and share their outlook and their stories, and because it is one of those careers where it's like a guest I had on the episode hasn't been published yet, but he said, 90% of the time you're bored, 10% of the time you're crapping your pants. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
you don't always appreciate it for what it is until you have some distance from those calls that you went on, because they were so disruptive and crazy. And then it's really, to me, it really is it is a career to, have the proper type of pride in. You should be proud if you're a police officer, and it's an ancient profession, and it's so needed, so to hear
Yeah.
you listen to podcasts and you come on and then share that, to me was just so cool. So I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's whether you told the story or not, you're creating the platform. You making it possible for these stories to be heard. I think that's important too. Even people that aren't cops or hate cops, I hope some of those people can hear this stuff and at least get a sort of respect for what a lot of these guys go through. There's a lot of guys on this show that have been through some stuff that nobody should need to go through ever. But
Yeah.
that's our job.
They
So,
left it all on the mat for sure, man. Yeah. And
yeah.
dude, believe me, I get those. I have a couple dedicated, like very liberal listeners, and they listen to the show, and they will write me like a 2-page email about like trying to get me to think differently, but like we just have different ideologies, but
Right.
they keep listening, so I think
Yeah.
they will say like, I really have appreciation for this profession now. At least they just don't think we're like the devil now, like they understand,
Yeah.
what it is. And believe me, like, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like if you could snap your fingers and make this, like Eden, and we didn't need cops, well, yeah, that would be great, but it's never
Yeah,
going to
that'd
happen
be-
with the humans. We're all sinners. It's not, and that ain't ever going to end. It's everywhere. So we need people out there taking care of business. So like I said, Hagan, honored to have you on, brother. I got to do the outro of the show. Can you hang on for like 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. The great Hagan Majors. Really super fun interview. Really appreciate him coming on. This is the time in the show where we thank the Patreon sponsors. Believe it or not, if you go sergeant or above, you're getting shout out. And there are 4 lieutenants now, which is puts a smile on my face. Lieutenants right now, the great and powerful Andy Biggs, Kyle Roberts, upgrades to lieutenant. You are the man, sir. The great Michael Roach of Roach Machines AI Solutions. Check him out. Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Thomas Connell. Thank you, sir. Now the sergeants. Adam Alexander. Thank you. The great Adam McMahon. The great Adam Mihal. Ben Peters, everybody. The great Bentley Barnett. Thank you. Brad Thompson. Love you, buddy. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards. Amazing woodworker on Instagram. Check him out. Sherry Finch. Thank you, madam. The great Clark Lockoff, everybody. Dave Ellman. Love you, buddy. Thank you. Dennis Carrasquillo, everybody. Doug and Kelly Newman. Much love to you in Wyoming. Dylan Mosher, everybody. Elliot Sykes, Gary Steiner, the great George Cariotis, Greg Gadboy is a bad man. Thank you, sir. James Rose, ladies and gentlemen, the great Jason Labrie. None other than the great Jason Lau. John Jordan, thank you, sir. John Shoemaker, John and Aaron Kate, love you guys. See you at church. The great Lauren Stimson. The handsome Lane Campbell, everybody. Lisa Gano, hold it down at dispatch. Thank you, Lisa. Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles, check him out. Nancy Hammond, thank you, madam. The great Nick Adams. Paul Maloney, killer episode Paul did, check him out. Sergeant Raymond Arsenal, thank you, brother. Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother. Stay safe out there. The great Sasha McNabb, Scott Young, Sean Clifford, Seth Wright, Sheriff Ronald Long, ladies and gentlemen. The great Tammy Walsh holding it down at dispatch. Thank you, Tammy. Tony Fahey. William James Long. That's Deputy William James Long to you. Thank you very much. Zachary Pleat. And the great George Tessier. Woo. Thank you, guys. You're taking my breath away. Literally. I really appreciate all the support you guys give on the Patreon. Every time I get a little notification that someone has joined to support, it really tickles me, and I appreciate it. So I love you guys, and I will see you next week.